The military presence in this community is critical to this community, in my opinion, not just because of the dollars in the economy, but because of the mission. And I'm very supportive of the mission, and I want to be there to support the mission and the families that support the mission, all of that. And obviously that supports the economy of the community, which supports other parts of the community that are not military. This is critical to this community. This is something that we identify with. We've got extraordinary assets because of the military. So I'll spend significant time on those relationships, and let me tell you how that looks. This is about local government. We at the county, there are agreements that we have to help with snow plowing on bases, for example. The infrastructure that's around the bases, the land development around the bases. When the commanders go back to Washington and talk about what the mission is, they want to know if they can complete that, and sometimes that goes to that kind of infrastructure and that kind of support from the community. That's where it counts. Now, that's huge, and I am not going to ever turn my back on that. But we've got to recognize that there's half of the economy that are other things as well. And we have to develop those for a variety of reasons, not the least of which, of course, is to be able to survive cuts to that are out of our control, in large part, and to be able to create more of that cultural, economic diversity in the rest of our economy to, again, attract the other businesses, attract the new jobs, attract the new workforce.
As much as it takes. Folks who, and I appreciate the sentiment, I wish we weren't 50% dependent on the military. And let me make sure you understand, we're 33% dependent on the military payroll itself. The other 17% is defense-related industries. My guess is that's the highest it's ever been, and it's an unhealthy dependence. But for people just to say, we're our dependence and this is all economics and stuff like that, need to look at the history of this town. It has been a military town from virtually its inception. I mean, Fort Carson came on the scene in 1942. That's what was the first boom. I mean, that's when things started to take off. The Air Force Academy, whether it's your newspaper or whatever, whoever to deny that it's a military town, I think is foolish. What we need to work on is expanding the private sector, as opposed to suggesting we need to reduce the military sector. That may happen, right. But as mayor, don't expect me to sit back and let it happen.
Well, as I sat there the other evening for the listening session, I looked at those two gentlemen from the Pentagon, and I thought, how many cities are they going to visit, and how many times are they going to hear the same "we love you" comment? I mean, it's kind of like a city can't afford not to do it, but I can't believe that our presentation was that much more distinctive than some other cities making that presentation. Yeah, I was a military dependent for several years, and I know that this is a choice location for the men and women who are in the Army or the Air Force. But I don't know that that makes any difference to the Pentagon. They're making their decisions on where can they get the proper training. What's the political clout of the people who are representing, say, a base in Texas or California? Those are all out of our control. So I certainly think the mayor should be a champion for military staying here. What I think would be a better use of the time, though, is that's half of our economic base is the military revenue, or the part of the economy. And what if there are some reductions? I don't think we're going to have closures per se, but we could possibly have reductions. What are we going to do? How are we going to fill that gap? Is anybody thinking about that? What's our plan B here?
In terms of keeping the military here, I think it would be foolish not to try to keep the military here. But where I differ is how you keep the military here, and I don't think that it is. I think it's great to show support for military if citizens want to wear green or send postcards to the Army to say keep Fort Carson here. But the best way to do it is, like any business here, is show what the city has done to be responsive to the needs of that community. If we're providing over 50% of our economic engine here is through the military, then we need to be responsive to those needs. If that means powers an airport, when the base commander says, well, we can't get people in the gate because of the backup on powers, and we haven't done anything about it, it doesn't really speak volumes for us, so that when we have people go to Washington to say, look what we've done, we need to be able to say how we've been responsive. When there's a development going into right next to the Air Force Academy and the Civil Engineering Department has concerns about runoff that haven't been addressed, before we approve that project, how about we make sure that the Air Force Academy Civil Engineering can work with Public Works and make sure that they come to an agreement about whether or not the runoff is accounted for. Those are the things that we can do. And it's not just going on TV and praising the military. It's saying, how are we responding to the community? And how are we responding to the personnel that are here?